Just to familiarize you guys, if you haven't seen our tank before, it's a very interesting and unique way of storing high pressure gas. So it's just a serpentine style plastic liner where we overwrap dry fiber, and we're going through the DOT special permit process right now, and we're it's a new class of tank. So essentially, the thing that our customers care about, and most other customers care about, is efficiency, scalability, and safety. And we've just kind of highlighted, where the benefits of these types of tanks reside. So, we have more volumetric and gravimetric efficiency compared to other types of tanks. The production process is super scalable, and then we have to consider the safety benefits. We see markets in general for a lot of civil and defense markets in mobility, remote power, bulk storage, and aerospace. And we've kind of got a general, because we didn't have to choose, which market we were pursuing. So, we see opportunities in each of these markets. We got started in 2018, and we're a leader in this technology space in terms of conformable tanks. By 2023, we became the first company to pass the hydrogen gas vehicle design qualification tests. And just, some of us in the company were part of the standards development, which is really important and not easy, and certainly not overnight. So it takes a long time to, adjust the standards to accommodate these types of tanks. Last year, we got the first D&V approval in principle for this type of tank, and now we're working on our DOT special permit, which we expect to be completed by the end of the year. Most of the testing is already completed. Earlier this year, almost a year ago now, we were at CES with our mobility demonstrator, and we opened up our new facility in Wixom earlier this week. Why would you use hydrogen? This just demonstrates, by decoupling sort of the power demands from batteries and storing and the energy using hydrogen as the energy carrier, you can end up with these hybrid solutions that end up with a lot more uptime and cargo capacity for the same performance or better performance. So it's essentially, part of this, hey, it's not batteries or hydrogen or diesel or it's how do we find these solutions that are the best fit, best mixture of, the available technologies to give us the solution that we want. So, I definitely don't think that hydrogen is going to take over and dominate every mobility application, but nor are batteries. And it's just a matter of how do we find these applications that are the best, depending on what the customer needs are. Essentially, our focus is on finding these markets where regulatory actions aren't driving it and there are real operational benefits, and batteries specifically aren't suited for everything. So in the aviation sector, for example, given decarbonization, not necessarily driven by regulatory actions, but also driven by companies' desire for meeting their customers' expectations. Pros of using hydrogen: you've got zero emissions, you've got energy resiliency. It's based on existing technology. It's not about this futuristic thing. We use hydrogen currently. It's an industrial gas that we transport and ship around and generate in the US a lot. And then compared to other solutions, you end up with a lot of energy density, and you can have high uptime because you have the same refueling characteristics as liquid fuels, but you end up with, you don't have as much downtime in terms of kind of a battery solution. So, but the cons, the cost of hydrogen right now from a production standpoint and some of the infrastructure you need to build is certainly not to be ignored. Fuel availability: while hydrogen is a industrial gas that we use, it's not currently widely available as a fuel. The mass of the solution set can be the mass of the hydrogen and all the infrastructure can be a challenge. And then also packaging, especially if you're doing dual fuel applications. We are already starting to see heavy duty trucking and medium duty vehicles, a lot of these in Europe, that are starting to investigate the space and actually build real vehicles to do this application. Similarly, we see construction equipment. There's companies like Caterpillar, and in the UK, you've got JCB, where you can consider that you're going to have a hydrogen delivery mechanism, and then you've got all these these pieces of equipment that can use hydrogen as motive power. There's a break-even point, for large construction systems and the consumption rates. You may have liquid hydrogen as being a more dominant solution, whereas for high latency applications, you're going to have gaseous hydrogen be more dominant. Agriculture, again, these are, tend to be distributed assets, so you don't want to have to take this thing somewhere to be fueled. So you can consider having hydrogen generation on site, and then you can certainly own your own energy destiny, if you will. And then so you basically deliver the fuel to the farm or generate it locally and store it locally. And then you can even consider biogas capture and steam methane reforming to generate hydrogen. And Michigan happens to be a good site for this because of all the generation of these types of biofuels. Material handling happens to be one of the places where I would say most fuel cells in the world today are in this space. So aviation for the aircraft, but also even nearer term, there are applications where you can use aviation, ground support as the nucleation site. But when you look at the cost of delivered fuel and you compare it to on-site generation, you can start to see huge economic benefits. So, the cost of delivering a gallon of diesel to in theater, if you would, can be up, $300 to $800 per gallon, and that starts to make on-site generation really attractive. Similarly to some of these markets for construction and mining. And one of the things that we see is if you are building mining operations and you start to consider building hydrogen generation there, you're going to have this low cost of incremental scale of your hydrogen production facility. And that could seed kind of a hub and spoke model where instead of building additional hydrogen generation, you could just incrementally increase the size of your hydrogen generation needed to feed your mining operation. So rail, this we see in Europe. There are applications where you've got air quality concerns and you've got high uptime requirements, and you can start to see where hydrogen has benefits from an energy density standpoint, and you can also retrofit existing equipment, so it doesn't require a lot of new technology. Even if you were to add a tender car to the either freight and or passenger cars, passenger rail systems, there are multiple companies working on this application, and it's really about for us, the benefit is there's a storage availability constraint. There's already a significant amount of CNG applications here. So the leap from CNG to hydrogen, from a gaseous pressure fuel onboard standpoint isn't that high. But you've got all these other loads where you don't want to be idling diesel engines just from an air quality standpoint, and plus, fouling of the equipment and reducing of the usability of the equipment can be served better, even if you're just doing hotel loads for supplying additional auxiliary power to avoid idling in urban areas. It can be highly beneficial. Maritime, very wide space here. You've got everything from small boats and ferries moving to hydrogen applications all the way up to global container shipments, and there's a wide range of decarbonization solutions here, all the way up from, you've got hydrogen, all the way up to, ammonia and hydrogen carriers, like ammonia. But, again, in some of these applications, batteries make sense. In some cases, there is a huge benefit to hydrogen applications, and we start to see them. It's a matter of, getting the infrastructure there, building the fueling structure in places like, the Port of Detroit, and where you have ferry operations. It's a great way to demonstrate and start using this technology. We look at wind and solar curtailment as being very interesting. With the increased generation of renewable energy, you necessarily have increase in curtailment, which, again, the first markets we see developing, whether they be in South Africa or in Europe, in the US as well, you have either hydrogen as a byproduct, or you have these economic conditions such as, solar and wind curtailment, where it presents a really interesting lower cost solution for generation of low cost hydrogen. But we're focusing on operational benefits, uptime, payload, and economics. Plus, just like we saw with CNG, you're going to see these things beginning with areas where you can see centralized high duty clusters. So ports, warehouses, logistics, and mining, interestingly, could be an area where, you're going to have this need for energy, and you're going to have opportunities to be an offload area. And then we look at, not trying to basically take out every market, but instead focus on where can we focus where hydrogen has a real benefit. If there's a silver lining to, what's happened over the past year in the hydrogen market, it's about really kind of blowing off all of the noise about things that, the hype cycle, I would say, and focusing on the areas where, hey, let's just start doing some of these things at the scale where they need to be done right now, instead of waiting for this huge step change when everything has to be right on day one. Because there's a lot of markets and applications where it already makes sense, and we should just start doing them and then let them kind of grow and nucleate, rather than waiting for the government to tell us, I'm going to give you $1 billion to do this, whether or not it makes sense. So there's all these, this is why you shouldn't do any of this stuff. And yet we continually get these messages from people like, I just want to do this, and I don't know who can help me do it. And so our choice is to focus on listening to those voices and helping them find the solutions, rather than try to convince everybody that this is the one and only solution for everything. Because you can always argue, benefits, pros and cons, but there's enough market traction for us to start focusing on these areas where people are just like, I need a solution, and if you can provide it, I'm happy to pay you.